2 p.m. We will call the meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we would stand. Ready? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Zoning Board of Adjustments hears requests for appeals of the city planner decisions, variances to the literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance, and special exceptions. The ZBA is a fact-finding body, and to grant variances, it must determine the existence of special conditions other than solely financial, which create undue hardship for the applicant. Positive action requires affirmative vote by at least 4 of the 5 members. ZBA decisions are final, and recourse from ZBA decisions is to a court of law. Okay, so we will proceed on to items on our agenda. First, it'll be approval of the minutes for the November the 19th, 2020 meeting. If you will look those over, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve the minutes from the November 19th, 2020 meeting.
Okay,
I second the motion.
Second, Mary Ann. All right. Have any discussion? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we move to a public hearing. Consider the request for a variance of the zoning ordinance section 118-428B1 to provide an alternative screening wall on 902 Southeast Stallings Drive, lots 86, 86A, 1, 86B, 87, and 88A, City Block 56, and Lot 88-9, City Block 56 of the Wicker subdivision. So first we'll hear staff reports.
Yes, thank you. Lena Chafin, City Planner, City of Nacogdoches. The applicant is requesting a variance from the literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance in order to achieve a reasonable use of the property. The ZBA rules and procedures state that this type of variance may be requested whenever, owing to exceptional and extraordinary conditions, the literal enforcement of the provisions of the zoning regulations would result in a unnecessary hardship in the development of the property. Oh, come back. Oh no. Our little mouse isn't working, so I've got to go run all the way back through. All right. The applicant, Drury Construction, has been operating their construction business at this location for over 15 years. They're currently completing site work on the property to create a contractor's yard. A contractor's yard is defined in the zoning ordinance as an open storage yard for supplies and operational equipment, including buildings, but not constituting a junkyard, wrecking yard, or salvage yard. The subject property and surrounding area is zoned B2 general business, which does permit a contractor's yard. However, in the B2 general business zoning district, the zoning ordinance does require additional restrictions on open storage areas. Zoning ordinance outlines that open storage areas shall be screened from all adjacent properties by either a 6-foot wooden fence or a 6-foot masonry wall to provide a visual screen of the storage from those adjacent properties, including public rights-of-way. This requirement should not be confused with the zoning ordinance for commercial sites with residential adjacency, which require screening for non-residential development that's adjacent to property that's zoned for residential, like your R1, your R2, and your R3. So these are two separate requirements. Section 118.429, Section 118.428, a commercial and industrial district screening from view is only intended to screen those commercial service areas and outdoor storage areas. It's not meant for just general commercial screening. And so I just wanted to make that distinction real quick before we moved on to the next slide. So as stated, the subject property and surrounding area is zoned B2 general business. It has been zoned B2 since 1971, with the property along Wicker and Patty Ann Street being zoned R4 and developed with single-family residences in the late 90s and early 2000s. A property to the south along Ridgewood Drive has also been zoned B2 since the 1970s and started being developed with manufactured homes in the early 1990s. So just to give you a little history on the development of the property in the surrounding area. The applicant is requesting a variance to zoning ordinance section 118.428, that commercial and industrial district screening standard. And in lieu of a masonry or wood material as outlined in the ordinance, they would like to request to build a metal chain link fence with a heavy polyurethane knitted mesh material that has at least a minimum opacity of 85%. And so this is material that you might see in a recreational setting for sports complexes. They oftentimes will use chain link with a very thick mesh to provide a visual screen, but it still allows some light and air to come through. And these are just some sample images of that type of fencing material. On your screen, you see the site plan exhibit that's been submitted by the applicant. The area outlined in blue is where they're proposing to install the privacy mesh along the entire perimeter of the property, except for a section of the northern portion, which is the remaining business. That's where their offices are, some outdoor storage buildings, and so there's no need to screen that section. It's just the remaining boundary that's highlighted in blue on your screen. This is an exhibit that was provided by the applicant to demonstrate the topography challenges of the property. The property currently slopes up from New Press Road with about a 20-foot grade difference as you travel from east to west across the property. It slopes up to about 316 feet at the highest point and then back down to 310 feet. The site work and grading that's underway is not intended to reduce the topography altogether, just create larger areas where they can store their heavy equipment, their heavy construction material, but there will still be some steep topography on the property, and we'll see some sample images in just a minute. And so these are some site photos of the subject property. These are taken from New Press Road. So these are the entrances into the property, and you can kind of see in the background there's some large heavy vehicles and a little bit of storage material. And as we move into the property, you see this is just an example of some of the equipment and materials that they store on site. And then the photos on the bottom are actually directed towards those properties along Ridgeview. So just kind of trying to give you an idea of what that view looks like on the commercial side. These are photos taken from those side streets. These are images taken from Ridgewood Drive, where those manufactured homes have been developed into the subject property. So just trying to show you kind of the current visibility that those residents have with that outdoor storage area. This photo is taken from Patty Ann Street. That's from that subdivision that's kind of to the northwest of the subject property. On the property in the upper left-hand corner, you see Drury Construction on the left, and then on the right, you've got a single-family residence, and that street dead ends right there, and actually is an alternative entrance into the Drury Construction area. These are photos taken from Wicker Street. That's the area that's also zoned multifamily. This is the end of that street, and that blue house is the one at the very end of the cul-de-sac. And just looking, facing towards the Drury property, just kind of showing you the current visibility before any kind of fencing or anything has been installed. So in order to grant a variance, the board must find that the following criteria has been satisfied, and those are outlined on your screen. And we'll go through those and identify staff's findings and our recommendations. So for criteria 1, the variance must be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan. The general purpose of the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance is to generally just promote the health, safety, and welfare of Nacogdoches through orderly and efficient development. The screening standards found in the section of the ordinance that they're requesting variance from further this general purpose by enhancing the view and image of the community, contributing to the overall quality and visual appearance of individual developments, and safeguarding and enhancing property values, and to protect the public and private investment. Staff finds that the proposed fencing material does provide a visual screen that effectively blocks the view of that proposed outdoor storage area from adjacent properties, and also blocks any kind of debris or wind-blown trash that might be generated by that outdoor storage area. And so while the request is a substantial deviation from the standards that are outlined in the ordinance, we find that it does still meet the spirit and intent as outlined. Criteria number 2, the variance will not substantially and permanently injure the appropriate use of adjacent property within that district. As we talked about earlier, the properties to the south are zone B2 general business, but they've been developed with manufactured homes, which are not a permitted use in that zoning district. So they are legal non-conforming uses. And the idea is that in the future, when those properties redevelop, if they redevelop, they might redevelop into some sort of commercial use or perhaps even multifamily. The properties that are located on Patty Ann Street and Wicker Street are developed as single-family but are zoned multifamily. The remaining property along the north is zoned commercial, and that's where the remaining offices and storage buildings of the Drury construction is located. And so staff finds that granting of the variance would not affect the appropriate use of the adjacent property. Most of the properties are already developed, except for the property to the west, which is vacant, and so this wouldn't affect the development of that property as well. For criteria number 4, criterion number 3, the variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. Staff finds that the granting of the variance shouldn't have any kind of adverse impact on the health, safety, or general welfare as outlined in this criteria. Number 4, the variance will not authorize a use other than those permitted under the current B2 general business zoning district. So the variance has no impact on the current development or any other uses that might be permitted. It's explicitly just a development standard. Criteria number 5, the plight of the owner of the property is sought due to unique circumstance existing on the property. Staff finds that the topography is a unique circumstance that doesn't apply to other similarly situated properties. Like we talked about earlier, the grade from the street as you travel west is a dramatic grade and does create some challenges for the development of the property. And this is at no fault of the applicant, which takes us to criteria number 6. The variance is not a self-created hardship that was created by the applicant. It is unique to the subject property. And therefore, staff does recommend approval of the variance request due to the unique topographical conditions and find that it does meet all the criteria as outlined on your screen and detailed further in your staff report. We did send out 14 notices to property owners within the 200-foot notification area. We did get a letter from a resident on Wicker Street. She was concerned that the proposal was a zone change, but once we, explained that it was just an alternative to the fence, they didn't have any concerns or issues with the variance request. And the applicant is also in attendance if the board should have any questions. And we do have a resident signed up to speak. So when you open up the public hearing, we will be calling in someone to speak to the commission, or to speak to the board. Does the board have any questions of staff at this time?
So the only reason why they have to, that this fits it, because this is R4, it doesn't fall into the same criteria as R1, R2, and R3. Is the only reason why they don't have to build a better fence by those houses?
Yes, ma'am. The R4 multifamily district is not considered residential for that requirement. Sites with residential adjacency is considered a commercial district. So the screening requirement that we talked about earlier for commercial sites with residential adjacency only applies to single-family R1, R2, and then the R3 two-family, and then agricultural is considered a residential district.
Even though there's not one multifamily on Wicker Street?
No, ma'am, because multifamily actually allows single-family development by right. So those lots
They're all
are
single-family houses?
They are, yes, ma'am. And so the requirement is explicitly applied to the zoning of the property, not necessarily the developed use.
I would guess I'm trying to figure out who assigned R4 to something that has single-family on the
Yeah, it was done in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then it was developed shortly after that. So I imagine someone was wanting
No,
to.
the house at the very end there's been there since the 80s.
So, since the 80s? Okay, I was going off of.
83, my son stayed at a daycare that was in a private home at the end of Wicker Street. So I know it was there in 83.
Yeah.
So.
Now, the R4 multifamily zoning district does have some built-in flexibilities as far as development standards that you don't find in the single-family zoning districts. So it's not uncommon to see single-family developed in R4 because it's easier to develop single-family in R4 because the setbacks are reduced. You don't have as many restrictions on where the parking can go. It allows for a higher density. And so there's other subdivisions in town that are zoned R4 but are developed as single family because there's more flexibility with the development standards.
Any other questions of the staff?
What is the lifespan of this mesh?
I actually would like to defer to the applicant if you guys
Okay.
are all right with that, to talk
Okay.
about the details of the materials being proposed.
Okay.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. Jeff?
Hi, my name is Jeff Cupid, and I represent Drury Construction Company and Drury Investments. It's about a 25 to 50-year lifespan on that. It's a recycled material, and it has a tremendous lifespan on it. That's one of the reasons we want to use it. It lasts much longer than wood plank. It's got about the same opacity as a wood plank fence. And the whole purpose, we need a chain link security fence. We lose about $400 to $500 a month in theft, batteries, and now catalytic converters. And last night, we had a truck stolen from back there. It's just continuous problems. And we think that this mesh screening, it allows light to go through, so it's not gonna kill anybody's plants that are, on the other side of the fence, or allows some wind to come through, so it doesn't block wind like a block wall or a wood fence. So we just think that's the best use for it is that privacy screening.
Is there anything in place for if it gets torn or just starts becoming unsightly or anything?
Well, we're gonna fix it. It's gonna look, we own most of the property around it. We're gonna develop that on property on New Press Road. The Keith Drury, I don't know if you know Keith, he lives right there.
Yeah, I know
So
where Keith
he's not gonna let it get too out of sight. We're invested there. So your child went to, was it Miss Wicker?
Miss Mary?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember her when she was there.
I'm gonna tell my age now. He's 38 years old.
Oh.
But yes, Miss Mary kept him for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's all the questions I
Any
have.
other questions of Jeff?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the property owner is required to maintain any kind of screening in good condition. So if we did get a complaint that, hey, that there's rips in the fencing or rips in the mesh, there's a mechanism to bring that into compliance and to replace it or refinish it or repair it or what have you. So they are required to keep it in good condition to make sure that's actually being effective as a visual screen.
All right. Now we'll open the public hearing for this particular motion. Anyway, just to let you know, those in attendance can speak or by phone at this case. The applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal for any arguments by the request. During this time, the members of the board can listen, and then we can ask questions later. So that's the gist of it. So our public meeting is open. We don't have anyone physically in attendance. Is she calling in?
Yes, our IT department will be calling in
Okay.
our caller, and they should be doing it shortly.
Okay.
All right, give me 1 second, Elena.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hi. You are attending the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. It's been scheduled today
Yes,
for
ma'am.
4 p.m. Yes, we've called you in to speak on agenda item number 4 for the variance to the alternative fence material. Would you please state your name and address, and the board will receive your comments.
Okay, Mona Williams, 324 Wicker Drive. They're negative. Just text is 75964. Are you ready for the comment?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was just, in reference to the wooden fence as opposed to the wire fence with the mesh, I'm thinking the wood fence would be much better for the environment. Not only that, it'd be much better for the residents, and instead of, degrading our property, it would be improving the property with the wooden fence, especially around the residential area. And I'm just kind of thinking of the future as far as the look and the cosmetic part of it also. I'm just thinking it would be a, better, looking neighborhood if it was, a wooden fence installed as opposed to, metal fence. We have some people with metal fences out there now and they're worn and, just old and rusted and uncared for, like they're bent in certain places. They haven't been replaced. And a wooden fence, I think, would be, a lot, just much, much better in that area and that residential area. I know it's a business over there. That business is over there too, but I think it would just look so much better.
All right.
I don't.
Well, if you don't have any other comments, we thank you so much for calling in.
That was it. Okay. Thank you for calling me.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, and Chairman, that was the only person that we had signed up to speak on this evening. Yeah.
All right, so no other callers, so we will close the public hearing. At this point, public will not be allowed to speak to the matter. Are there any questions that the board might have that they want to ask of staff or the applicant?
And just to speak to the residents' concern, the requirement for the wood and the masonry is because when that ordinance was first adopted, it was specifically for commercial sites that abutted to property that was zoned residential, and a solid picket wood fence or a masonry fence does have more of a residential character, and so the idea was not only screening but to improve the aesthetics of the area, whereas this standard is more of just a general screening of service areas and storage areas regardless of the zoning, but they chose to use the same wall and screening wall standard as the requirement for the residential adjacency. It is within the board's prerogative to impose conditions on approval of the variance. You may approve the variance, you may deny it, or you may approve with conditions. And so the board may find that in order to mitigate adverse impacts that you require a section of the fence in one area to maybe have a higher opacity or alternative material or something of that nature. So it is within the board's prerogative to impose physical conditions like that to mitigate those adverse impacts on adjacent property owners. I do recommend that if you do that, we call the applicant back to the podium just to discuss those to make sure that they would be acceptable to the applicant.
Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion from the board at this point.
Is there, can we ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have questions.
How many feet is it right there where it joins the R4? If we did say that it might look better to put a wood fence there for those people that their homes are there.
I'm just going to pull up the presentation and go to our map so we can get a better idea. And then I have the exhibit as well. And it is dimensions, so we can tell you real quick, just give me just a moment. So for that section.
Does Drury own, obviously, this lot 88 where it goes around there?
Everything that you see outlined in yellow is.
They own that lot R4. They own the R4 lot 88.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And so that section right there is about 167 feet. And then the section that to the left, the remaining R4 boundary where Wicker comes in and stubs, that's about 350 to 400 feet. So you're looking at a total of 500 to 600 feet for that entire section that abuts property that's zoned R4.
What is the perimeter of the entire project?
I don't have that calculated altogether, but there is an exhibit in your packet, and it's here as well. So, Mr. Cupid, do you have that offhand?
No, it's
Okay.
30 plus acres, about 30 acres.
Well, it's showing right here, Mary Ann, that this part is 730 feet. Oh, this is on here. So it is 151, 228. and then you go up, looks like maybe 100 feet, and then go over 167. So I'm trying to figure out what the,
Oh, I see it.
Sarah, do you have your calculator out? Are you running the
yes, I was
numbers?
gonna add this up to see how many linear feet if we did the wood fencing there. I'm just.
May I ask a question while they're working on that?
Yes, ma'am.
This is for the applicant specifically. So, and I may have missed this, I don't know, maybe I did miss this, but, so my understanding is it has to be a minimum of 6 feet, and then in one of the exhibits, it shows a standard 8-foot privacy fence. So my question is two parts. One, what is your intention for the height of the fence, understanding that it's a security fence? Are you planning on doing an 8-foot chain link? Are you planning on doing something higher? And then my next question is, how high do you intend to extend that privacy screen? So for instance, if you're gonna do an 8-foot fence, were you gonna do the entire 8 feet in that privacy screen? Or were you gonna do a 10-foot fence with 8 feet of privacy screening?
We're gonna, probably 6 to 8 feet. I'm not certain. It may vary based on topography.
Okay.
But the screening will cover the whole length, height of the fence.
Okay, and is that part of the city written requirement that goes with, like, in making this adjustment, does it say then that if it's 8 feet, that this screen needs to be up to the 8 feet? Because I would think that that would be my concern if I was a resident. You know, I understand the need for the desire for a wood fence. I think anyone could relate to that want. But my main question would be, are they gonna see 8 feet of screen and then 4 foot of chain link on top of that? And then are they looking at what is gonna feel like a prison wall? Or is it gonna be the screen is mandatory going to the top?
Yeah, so the ordinance defines a screening wall as a fence or wall has a minimum height of 6 feet. And
Yes,
either has to be
okay.
wood or masonry. So the idea is at 6 feet from grade, you have a opaque material that blocks the views 100%.
Okay.
And so with this request, we would ask that they still maintain the 6-foot height, regardless of if they were, and then the mesh would be 6 feet as well, regardless of if they were doing it taller or what have you. So 6 feet is the minimum. They can always provide more. They can go higher if they like, but it's not required by code.
Okay, but is it required that the mesh goes to the height of the fence?
No, because they're actually proposing an alternative. There's nothing in the code that says if you do a 8-foot chain link fence, you have to do a 6-foot, mesh. The intent is to have 6 feet of solid screening.
Understood. Okay, so in my personal opinion, I would think that a stipulation to consider would be to mesh the entire height of the fence so that there's not a mesh ending and then continual chain link. Would be the only thing I would consider. I believe he has something to say behind you there.
Yeah, our preference probably is gonna to have barbed wire on top, like most security fences across the country.
Gotcha, okay.
And you can't mesh that. So
Right.
we would mesh not a problem meshing whatever the chain link part is.
Okay, okay. I would be in agreement to that if that would be a stipulation we'd need to put on there.
Sure, that's no problem.
That was my question, what you were going to do, because you've already had some thievery.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you were going to do something like concertina wire or something on top of that, so due to, make it not so desirable.
Right, it's standard security fence.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions?
Were the citizens put on notice that there would be barbed wire on top?
No,
Okay.
and that was not something that was included in the submittal, and it's not addressed anywhere
Understood.
in the ordinance.
Okay.
I guess I'm looking at, it's 646 feet of that borders, or it looks to me like that are approximately the residential area, which is about a little more than 10%. I've added up, it looks like it's 4,845 linear feet. Is that about right, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am.
Probably 5,000, give or take. And this is 650, so, we're looking at maybe 12%. I guess for me, if I was someone that had a home there with children, not even just with children, I don't know that I'd want to be looking at razor wire above my house. So I'm thinking, I guess I'm looking at if it could be an 8-foot privacy fence, wood privacy fence, without barbed wire that borders the R4.
My recommendation would be for one of the board members to make a motion for approval with that condition, and then ask for a second, and that would open it up for deliberation. And then you can have that discussion and just be sure, that we include the applicant to make sure that's an acceptable condition. But yes, that's something that you could recommend, but I do ask that you include it into a motion, make a second, and then we can open it up for discussion amongst the board.
Okay, then I would make a motion that the 650 feet, give or take, that borders R3 be 8 foot.
R4.
R4 be 8 foot wood privacy fence. And the remainder can be the 8 foot chain link with the privacy screen going to the complete 8 foot.
I think they are proposing a minimum of 6 feet at this time.
Okay.
And so,
I thought you
right.
said,
6, yes.
okay, I misunderstood. Okay, then I will redo the motion. I'll make a motion that the R4 boundary be 6 foot privacy fence with no razor wire or anything, what do you call that goes above the, in the residential area, and then the 6 foot privacy fence with the screening to the top.
So the motion is for approval with the condition that the property boundary abutting the R4 be a 6 foot wooden privacy fence in lieu of the chain link and
Yes.
mesh that's being proposed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it. I want to discuss something.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now I'll open it for discussion.
Jeff, did I understand you to say that you were going to leave a 2 foot on the top where you said you were going to put, okay, did you say an 8 foot chain link but you were going to leave 2 feet so that you could put the barbed wire or the concertina wire on top of that because it tore up the meshing?
Yes,
Did I
ma'am.
understand you correctly?
6 foot of regular chain link with a mesh, and then typically it's like probably 14 to 24 inches, the little arms that come out that you run the barbed wire through.
Okay.
That's what it would
That's
be.
that's what I misunderstood then. Okay.
I have a question of Jeff. If you went with the 6 foot wood fence with no wire on top, on that section of the fence, would that create for you a security issue since you're having so many break-ins that part of the fence then would not be secure because now it's only a 6 foot fence with no wire on top?
Yes, that, we might as well leave it open then.
You might as well leave a gate there, yeah.
They'd come over, because we have some fencing over there now, and it's not doing any good. And I can say, we wouldn't be opposed to their, and I don't, where it shows on the, that 167.813 feet, and that 100 feet right there, that little block, we would put up a wood fence there. That, we don't have a problem with that. That 228 and that 150, that is a slough. It's a creek that runs through there that there's no, I don't know if Elena can put up where the actual satellite image of that property, but there's not any, that's not next to somebody's house. I mean, it's through a slough and some trees. It's a pretty wide gap there. Nobody's ever gonna be able to build there. It's in pretty bad shape. So that really is not, in my opinion, is not necessarily the 228 and 150, but if it would be good for the 100 feet and then the 167 to be, an 8 foot wood fence, then we're not opposed to that at all.
Will the 8 feet allow you some certainty of no break-ins?
8 feet's a lot better.
Okay.
Surprisingly enough, 8 foot is a pretty standard height. I mean, they can still get in, but we would put some wire on our side
Okay.
below the 8 feet to discourage that.
I think that's when I first did it, I said 8 foot so that it would be at the same height of the chain link with
Yeah.
the barbed wire. It would be more, I guess, aesthetically the same
Certainly.
height.
Yeah,
when I
so-
looked around.
We wouldn't be opposed to an 8 foot there on that 167 and the 100.
Okay.
Certainly, we wouldn't want to put wood down in that slough. It's just unnecessary.
My additional concern for the applicant would be vandalism to that wood fence, and then their responsibility to maintain a vandalized wood fence, which tend to be the type of fences that are vandalized. So just comment there for them. While I think the wood fences would be beneficial, and I agree that the 167 and 100 feet are ideal, I also would be concerned about the applicant having to tend to that and maintain it.
But didn't you say that you would put something on your side of that fence to deter
On the 8 foot, if we
on
were,
that wood fence?
did that, yes, ma'am, we would do something. I don't know what exactly, but we would have to do something.
Well, you could put the same arms out, only on the inside of the
Inside,
fence
right.
rather than on the outside.
Right. And we're actually gonna use that for our, all our personnel, just parking, just vehicle parking, during the day, hopefully, not at night too much.
I have a question of Elena. If the wood fence is considered, the requirement of the city is that it be a minimum of 6 feet, right?
Yes.
So if they went over the 6 feet, then that would be at their discretion.
Well, that's actually a condition that this board could impose as a condition of approval.
Okay.
So the city's minimum standard is 6 feet in height. They are proposing an alternative. And so because they're proposing something that varies from our minimum standard, it is within your right to impose that physical condition of an additional 2 feet to mitigate the impacts on that residential area.
Okay, and then it's also my understanding that by nature of the regulations, the city is that the planking must be on the exterior of the fence, is that right?
Yes, the finished side of the fence has to face the residential area, while the side with the support structures and all that has to be on the commercial side.
All right,
I was just thinking that would be a lot less easier to scale if you've just got a flat board. That's what I was thinking.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I would understand if it was turned around. That'd be just like giving them a ladder to go over, so.
Yeah, and it'd be more difficult to maintain that type of fence, and the idea is the finished side faces the residential because that's the more aesthetically pleasing side of it.
If they want over that fence, they're gonna get over it. That's the sad part.
a wood fence, a crowbar could take that off pretty easily. So my question again is of Jeff, I mean, what is acceptable to your group as far as security?
What you see a lot of times in these type settings, commercial settings, on security type fencing, you don't see a lot of wood because it tends to be vandalized. More often than not, if it's not a chain link, then they're utilizing what's called R4 panel fencing, which is a metal type fencing, typically some color, brown, green, whatever. So we would prefer to put an R4 metal type fence there on that 100-foot section and that 167-foot section.
Okay.
We don't have a problem doing something other than chain link next to that property. So potentially a R4 panel, metal panel, may be a better fit.
Okay, all right.
Or at least the opportunity, either, an 8-foot R4 or 8-foot wood, and we would have that choice.
So in your opinion, the wood fence is not secure?
It's not as secure, no. It's not as secure. It's not as secure. I happen to be over the planning department whenever this was instituted back in the 80s, and it was done. The wood panel fence and the masonry wall fence were done specifically for one project, which was Miller up there at Waterford in that commercial property. So we didn't look at alternatives. Most cities, City of Lufkin, Austin, Longview, they don't have specific requirements on aesthetics types. They just say fencing, and they leave it up to the applicant. But we want to, we're going to be a good neighbor. We want to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
On those arms, on the barbed wire at the top of the chain link, excuse me, I do not know the answer.
Right.
Do the arms face in towards the yard, or do they face out? I know they lean at an angle. Are they an inward angle towards your subject property, or do they face out towards?
They face out.
They face out towards the neighborhood.
They
Okay,
can face either. Sometimes you'll see them both ways, but typically it's out.
out. Okay, yeah, because they kind of lay out and then it runs across.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, keeps them from
Understood.
crawling up and
Keeps people
crawling
from
over.
crawling over. Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Could we rehear the motion now that
Yes.
we're down the road here?
So there is a motion on the table. So my recommendation would be to call for a vote, and then the board could deny the motion. And so then you can make another motion with the new condition that you guys discussed. And so you already have a motion and a second.
We'd like to hear the motion.
I'm sorry?
We'd like to hear the motion that's on the table right now. That's what I'm
Yes.
saying.
So, Teresa, your motion was to recommend approval with the condition that the portion of the property that abuts R4 be composed of an 8-foot wooden fence.
Actually, I think I said 6 foot.
6-foot wooden fence.
Okay.
And so I call for a vote, and then yea or nay. If the motion fails, then you can make a new motion.
Okay, so my question again is if the motion calls for a 6-foot wooden fence, he can't build an 8-foot. Is that correct?
Well,
Or is it a minimum of 6 feet?
it's a minimum of 6 feet.
Okay, so more could be built.
Okay.
We would, okay, all right,
I think we could let it vote on, not vote,
okay,
and then do a motion.
okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
All right, so the motion fails, so please feel free to make
Okay, we have a new
another motion.
Would someone like to make another motion?
I guess were we discussing, or, I mean, I'm still, I guess I just think about these people with their houses there, as far as
Agreed.
so I would just redo the motion, present a new motion of an 8-foot wood privacy fence.
On the whole, on the,
On the 100 feet and the
Okay.
167 feet.
okay.
Lot, I guess that would be fencing lot 88. Would that be correct?
I believe so, but I think you could just make the motion that, make a motion for approval with the condition that the property boundary abutting R4 with the dimensions of 100 feet and 167 feet, as shown on the exhibit,
Okay.
shall be comprised of a 8-foot wooden privacy
Privacy
fence.
fence. Okay. That, my motion is that it just be the 100 feet by the 167.81 feet, as shown on the map that was provided in our packets, that be an 8-foot wood privacy fence.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second it, but I have to ask a caveat here. Okay, Rhonda, he also mentioned that they would probably put something up like some kind of deterrent
On their side.
on their side. So do we want to state that in the motion? I mean, that's why I seconded it, because I feel like we needed some discussion on that.
On the discussion side, Rhonda, I would say that I'm not going to agree to them putting up a wood privacy fence, because I think it's, I agree with your statement, but I think it's an undue hardship on the property owners, and I think that there is reason, cause to believe that it may be vandalized, and then they're gonna have to repair it, and they're gonna have another fence, and they're really just trying to keep their things secure. I also think that this fence is going to be much like you would see on a tennis court, so I don't think it's going to give the industrial prison-like look that we think it is, less the barbed wire on top. So I would be in favor of a motion that just simply said that there was not going to be barbed wire on that part, but everything else the same. That's just my personal opinion. I also think a metal panel fence would not serve that community well, because the reflection from the sun right there would be horrible. So that's just,
Okay, I have a question of Jeff. If we did the 8-foot that Olivia was discussing without the barbed wire at the top, would that be an easier fence for them to scale, though, being that they could put their feet in between the chain link?
Not
Is
an
it-
8-foot, it wouldn't.
Okay, so what would
And
be?
it'll have the mesh on it, so you can't get your fingers through there.
Okay, so for the applicant, the most secure would be the chain link with the mesh without the barbed wire.
Yeah, and we would do, I think aesthetically, it would be best when we got to that 100-foot section, say we're at a 6-foot chain link fence and there's 18 inches of barbed wire, take that next section up to 10 foot, so the sight line is pretty much the same. And then we
I
would,
guess that's what I'm thinking, is that I just hate for those, I mean, it is gonna look like a prison to those people,
Right.
especially if you
Right.
put the barbed wire
If you
there.
put the barbed wire on there, I
Yeah.
think definitely, I think if you do the mesh on it and our stipulation is that the mesh goes to the maximum height of the fence,
Yes.
then it would
Yeah.
look like you would see at a tennis court somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And it would be their neighborly duty to make sure that at least that part is always maintained and
Oh,
fresh,
yeah,
of course.
Okay, and he said he could take it to 10 feet at that point.
yeah, if we needed to, if we ended up
Right.
putting an 8-foot in there
So
and we, based on topography, because the
Yes.
next little sections are deep, it's a deep creek washout
Right.
area. We may have to adjust the heights in there,
Okay.
but we would put it, in line, whatever height that was. If the chain link was 6, we'd go to 8. If it was 8, we would go to 10.
Okay.
Rhonda, would you like to amend your motion?
Yes, I will amend my motion to be what height did we, a minimum?
So for the entire perimeter, it's 6 feet, and then for the sections, 100 and 167 feet, I think the board decided you wanted a higher fence for that section, right? And so, I'd like to be specific if we can, so like, you know, a minimum of 8 feet, or minimum of 8 to 10 feet for that section to allow for some variation, because in the vote, we have to be specific. So I would just say
Now,
that.
do we also need to do a motion to grant this variance?
So you're,
Approve it, yes.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry,
Their
yes, the
conditions.
motion needs to be to approve the variance with the stipulation.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, I will make a motion that we approve the variance for a security fence to be chain link with a mesh barrier, but with the 100 feet by 167 feet to be free of any barbed wire.
And to be minimum height of 8 feet.
Minimum height of 8 feet.
And that the mesh goes to the
And
top.
the mesh goes to the top of the chain link.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing no more discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No opposed. All right, wonderful. It passes with that stipulation. Sounds good. All right, there being no other items before the zoning board of adjustments now, I understand, we will adjourn this meeting at 4:50 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.